Hello, I am Wendel, and you must be very reassured that it is I who am speaking to you now. For though I am but a humble drawing aid, yet I must confess that I am a much more gracious host than that which you are normally, shall we say, subjected to.
And a nerd.
Perhaps you will agree that I am a shining beacon of class and distinction. Hold on, I must get this. This is most unfortunate. Find another Muel. Hired help, am I right? Let us now proceed with the art.
What's going on? This is Liam from Open Hand Art. Welcome. This is episode number 14, and I have a time lapse for you today. It's number 5 in a series of 5, so this closes up a segment. It's really cool to set a goal, go and do it, and then accomplish it, especially when it's something that you've never done before. And I mean, a video show, time lapse videos, and portrait art. I'd never done any of this before. This is all new to me, doing like digital portraits on Photoshop and Clip Studio. It's crazy. I'm 45 years old and I'm learning like I'm a teenager. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of fun. I'm glad you're with me. So let's watch this and have some fun, shall we? Starts off with the gray. The gray background is definitely the best way to start off a portrait as far as I can tell so far. I've tried doing sketches over texture and over white, over transparencies, but the gray seems to, I mean, it feels more creative, but it's also kind of, you know, it's a very traditional way of painting when you paint over something that's neutral. So you can pull the highlights out, you can push the shadows back, and you know, it's not like you can't get rid of the gray because the gray is a separate background. The whole thing about digital art is that you want to...
Hold on, Liam. Let me interrupt your riveting commentary for one question. How can it be that you draw orcs so very well?
He's right. He's right. That is what the LIQUIFY tool is for, is to correct your orc drawings when you're trying to draw a pretty girl. So that's what I'm doing here, and starting to map out her face and the planes of the face, getting the nose, the proportions. This 3/4 profile is particularly challenging because the area behind the nose is it's still there, and you have to show it. And you show it beneath the nose and behind the lips. It actually pokes out in a couple of different areas. And you want to make sure that those reveals are there. A lot of people neglect them. And that's because you're just not paying attention to the planes and the perspective of the face. You can see the converging lines from the eyes. Like if you put the eyes together with a straight line, it tilts down. And then there's a line also from one corner of the mouth to the next, and also the bottom of the jaw. And those lines are all changed with the perspective, because the angle, the lens that the camera had when it took the picture and how far it was from the figure made this really, like, perspective is very noticeable in this portrait. And so I actually took that and exaggerated it a little bit. And you can see here, yeah, there I go with the LIQUIFY tool to exaggerate that eye and bring it up higher.
Why is it, I wonder, that this does not look like the reference photo?
When you're drawing and you're using reference, there's always that struggle between, do I want to make this look like the reference photo, or do I just want to use the reference photo as a launching point to create my own work? And I really struggle with that one here. And that's totally normal, and it's fine. I mean, if you make it look exactly like the photo, there's always the kind of drawback that the photo was already made. And so why do you want to do what was already photographed? Like the photographer was the artist, you know, the photographer, the makeup artist, all that kind of stuff. if you're just recreating it as a painting, I mean, that takes a lot of skill and a lot of craft. And so that in itself is definitely noteworthy. And so having those kinds of chops is a great goal. It is. And that's why, part of the reason why anyway, that I'm doing these portraits is to, keep those muscles strong, keep the connection between your eye and your mind and your hand, going. So what I do here is take off with something other than photo likeness and get into the background. And I start just painting the crap out of the background with these brushes. And I found a couple of brushes that maintain the texture that I love so much about these, where it looks like a real paintbrush when it's only digital art. So I combine a bright orange background, which I kind of liked, and a blue and kind of teal background, and then leave those for later and then get back into the drawing here. So what I've done is I've colored her nose red and tried to use that as it's a device. When you make the places on the face where the skin is a little thinner, more translucent, where you make that red, so like the cheeks, the nose, and around the eyes a little bit red. Well, you don't want to go around the eyes too much because that just makes you look like you're sick, right? So there's a lot of things you do when you're translating reality into the painting that are really helpful. And so one of those things is making the nose red anyway, and it looks cute. My daughter commented on that. She says, "I like the red nose, Dad." Thank you. So that's what I'm working on here. And then also this area around the lips, where the lips kind of curve and then they go around to the far plane of the face. I've been learning a lot about that from Kim Jong-gi. And if you're an artist and you want to learn this stuff, I really recommend that you look at his work and his time lapse, especially where he's drawing women's faces. He draws the same kind of face repeatedly, but it's so masterful, and he's really good at getting that far side of the face rendered properly. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting to draw in the eye, and what I'm noticing is that I don't want to pull the eyes forward too much with too much contrast. So the colors are a little bit too dark there right now. So I'm going to push those back a little bit in just a little while. But before I get to that, I'm going to mess with the lips. It's a lot of fun messing with the different kinds of brushes to see what kind of textures you can get, what kind of brush lines you can show. It's very easy, or it's much easier anyway, to digitally paint with the blur brushes and the brushes that are just very soft without any kind of texture on them. You can get very realistic effects very, very quickly. And that's not to diminish artists who use photorealism when they paint. I much prefer a painterly approach. Artists like Simon Bisley, like Bill Sienkiewicz, am I pronouncing that right? I keep on getting my Polish friend to help me with that. The guy who did Elektra with Frank Miller, he's an amazing artist. But definitely Simon Bisley. And there's a handful of other comic book artists, especially the watercolor ones, who really just revel in painterly techniques, and I very much enjoy that. Jason Sean Alexander is also another really good example. Though he doesn't always use color, he's usually like penciling and inking. It's very painterly, very loose, very splashy, very rough and raw. Also, another artist who does that recently is Sean Gordon Murphy. He's also very loose and likes to use splashes. You can actually find fingerprints throughout his work as well. He puts ink on his fingers, I guess, and then touches everything. It's amazing. It's a very, very cool technique. And I mean, signature. He has his fingerprint on the artwork, right? Kind of cool. So there's no, set rule book, but in order to break the rules well, you have to practice. You have to practice the rules and get really good at your craft first. And that's why doing studies like this one, or any kind of study for that matter, is a really good idea. And in each study, you want to kind of limit your options and focus on like one or two things where you're just going to put all of your effort into that, and at the expense of everything else. So the artwork doesn't necessarily work as an artwork, but it definitely functions as a study and as a tool to get better. In music, they have a similar thing. It's called an etude. And it's like another kind of, like, etudes are beautiful. If you listen to them, you'll go like, wow, that's really awesome. Like Chopin had a bunch of those, a whole opus of etudes. And they're beautiful little pieces of music, but at the same time, they're not fully rendered symphonies, and the enjoyment only goes so far, and that's why they're like a study tool. So studies are still beautiful. Like this is it's a legitimate portrait in and of its own right. And I don't want to be an art snob about it. It's fine. I just have a different goal than doing just simple portraits. And, that's the thing. I want to get into comic books, which are also, kind of kitsch and laughed at by the more elitist artist type people, comic books. For me, I see so many absolutely incredible artists painting and drawing in comics that I just don't look down on it anymore. I got over that. I was a snob at one point, but no longer. So anyway, what I should talk about here is, so the hair. What's up with the hair, right? Well, I'm doing the hair on a separate layer, and I'm messing around with brushes that I'm not used to messing around with, and I'm experimenting with different techniques that I haven't messed around with before to try to make the hair look interesting. What I'm doing is I'm working from memory from an artist named Vutkar, who's that artist from Thailand who I got the brushes from. And he's really got this gift for painting hair in a loose way that still looks realistic. It's very painterly, and yet it still gives the impression of reality. He's really good at it. I think he's just a young guy too, from what I can gather. But it's tough. It's a tough technique. So I mess around with that a little bit, but I don't want to, add an extra 3 or 4 hours onto the painting just doing the hair when, the rewards aren't necessarily worth the effort to me at this point. I mean, the portrait looks all right. So what I'm doing to kind of finish it out here is put some highlights on the eyes, the nose, and the lips to kind of bring those forward. That upper ridge on the lips is a nice little tip. That's something I didn't know about before, but when you add a highlight on the ridge of the lips, it just makes them look more lush and, like they're wearing lip gloss or whatever, which is to give the impression of, moisture and youth and all that kind of thing. So it works. Even though it's kind of counterintuitive, like, do you really want to accentuate something like that? And the answer is yes. Yes, you do. Even though the lips are a part of the face, that upper ridge, it's just new to me. So I guess that's why I'm talking about it, because it still seems weird to me to do that. So here's the background, and I start, I'm just finishing up the neck and the jaw, but I get to the background in a little bit here. And I start messing around with some filters and different kinds of masking and painterly textures to try to do something more interesting with the overall look of the painting. See, when you have the benefit of painting digitally, you can do things that you wouldn't normally do in traditional media. So what I'm going to do here in just a moment is start experimenting with contrasts, with accentuated color. So I'm making what's called a curves layer here, and I'm messing with all kinds of different parts of the dynamics of the color and the contrast and what have you. And then I'm going to make that into a mask and then bring it out in painterly ways. So I'm showing you the menus here that I used to try to find these different brushes that I got from, one of many websites that are around nowadays where you can get textures and whatnot. I think I was using, it's called tomchalky.com. Really, really cool. Good assortment of brushes and textures from there that I've got here. You can see them on the left. I'm using them in the masking layer to just to add some more visual interest to the artwork. So at this point, she's looking pretty good. I take all these different layers and different things and kind of settle them down, the color, so the color isn't too contrasty and not too pale, that the background has a little bit more substance to it. I kind of like things being soft and moderate. So that's what I go for here. And these aren't necessarily subtleties that I would get on my own. That's the virtue of digital art, is you can, expand the results that you get past what you would normally do when you're mixing the colors and putting them down initially. And hopefully, you learn from that. And so later on, your use of color improves. And I realized here at the end that she didn't have any earrings in her ear. And I figured, I'll throw a little bit of jewelry on there, a little bit of bling to finish it out. A little bit more detail on the hair, put some shadows behind the earrings and behind the hair as well. And that about finishes it up. Yeah, there we go. I'm kind of moving it around in all ways. There we go. So square it up. So yeah, there you go. There's this week's portrait. It was a lot of fun. I got it done in just under 4 hours, which is kind of an improvement for me. There are a lot of artists that do quicker than that. Hats off to them, but whatever. So this is kind of all, it's all new to me. It really is. So a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I will see you again soon. We'll be talking about comic books. We'll be talking about a bunch of different artwork. I'm going to figure out what we'll do next week for the project. Maybe some male portraits, maybe some storytelling, maybe some sci-fi, some spaceships. Who knows? Anyway, talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye now.
My loyal fans, I trust that you will be well.